There's a test that probably everybody with sleep apnea needs to get, and it's related to something very common with sleep apnea, which is heart disease issues. And maybe you've already had a similar test. Very likely you missed this one little thing, and then maybe you ended up getting a statin, which can have some issues. That's why I want to talk about what this lab test is and if you should talk to your doctor about it. Well, I guess you can always decide what to do. But the reason this is so important, because like I said, it's not just like a, scare tactic of like, oh my God, like if you don't do something about your sleep apnea, you're screwed. It's really not good, folks. It's not. So here's the standard heart attack risk. And as you go up from severity of sleep apnea, so mild to moderate to severe, it can go to 3 times the risk. And a big part of this, as we'll dig in deeper, is because of what's happening inside the blood vessels. Every single time you stop breathing at night, it is going to cause a big spike in inflammation. There's going to be oxidation. That oxidation goes here, then your heart has to work harder and harder and harder till your blood pressure goes up. You have high cholesterol and just all these different things. But the thing is, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And when you're just looking at these traditional labs and even measurements, you're going to be missing one of the key analytes or things in your blood that really tell you just how bad your risk is. So that's why in this episode, we want to talk about what else you want to consider testing, risk of traditional treatments, and also some natural considerations and their considerations because this is for educational purposes only. This is a pun, but what's not a pun is this disclaimer. So, like I said, this is not medical advice. We're just talking about the mechanisms here. Always talk to your doctor and always subscribe to this channel, even if you have before. Actually, I don't think you can double subscribe. Nonetheless, people say I talk too much, so let's just kind of get to it. Got a new software here. Yeah, here we go. So, first, we need to understand this cycle. I already touched upon it earlier, but the whole thing is when we get cholesterol lab work done, yes, we get LDL, HDL, triglycerides, total, all of those are the typical markers. However, think of it like this. Think of an LDL molecule that's known as the bad cholesterol, which is a bit of an oversimplification, but let's just call it the bad cholesterol. Just like I'm now realizing how my lighting is bad. So let me shed some light on the issue here. Yeah, okay, this is why I don't work in cinema. But back to bad LDL. It's not so really much bad. Yes, it's like a bomb, but bombs are only bad when they get ignited. That's how I want you to think of LDL. Because by itself, not so bad, but when it is ignited or oxidized, as we can see here by free radicals and all that, or by having intermittent hypoxia, or when there's big swings in oxygen at night, it's going to lead to oxidized LDL. And then as a result, just like when the orcs charge into Helm's Deep with those bombs and explode the walls, very similar to your arteries here. All right. So we have Helm's Deep over here. I'm just going for this full analogy. We're going full set on this. We have this wall here. And basically, when those little orcs get in, if they're the right kind, then they can blow up and let all the other bad orcs in. I'm talking about monocytes, lipoprotein A, etc., etc. We don't want orcs in our bastions of civilization. We also don't want oxidized LDL in our arteries because then they lead to this narrowing here. So that's what we want to prevent at all costs. So I'm getting used to this new software here. So what happens, this will kind of become more inflamed here. This is the inside of the wall here. So when this becomes inflamed, this becomes more narrow. It was shown a little bit better over here initially, right? So that's an aneurysm. Where's my just arterial stiffness? So basically, when this gets more inflamed, this becomes bigger, this part, which then makes the place where blood flows smaller, which would cause a lot of issues there. Now, the biggest factor I've mentioned, it's oxidized LDL. And in particular, the oxidized LDL to HDL ratio is going to be one of the most important factors here. But we're going to focus mainly on just reducing oxidized LDL because that's what the episode is about. So that's what we want to reduce. And again, think of it like we have a bomb. Okay, I feel kind of moderately unsafe with this bomb, regardless of the level of ignition. But when it's ignited, we want to make sure that we're able to defuse it. Okay, that's like the whole big premise here. Because when we look at people with sleep apnea by itself can increase oxidized LDL by about 7.4 times. Okay, that's a big issue because it's going to selectively increase one of the biggest drivers of coronary artery disease and thus heart attacks and strokes. Not cool. Also, not cool is reversing sleep apnea, whether it's CPAP or breathing exercises, losing weight, handstands, whatever floats your boat, mouth guards, etc. It does not reverse this. Okay, so pretty much no change. This is people at baseline, and then 12 months later, after CPAP therapy, no change in oxidized LDL, despite a big drop in AHI. Pretty much, if the damage happens, you need to do something to reverse it separately. Okay, and that's why statins are given out. This is like a segue into our second point here. And by well-meaning physicians, well, hopefully they mean well, but you can always be swayed by pharmaceutical reps at lunch who bring Chipotle. That's, like, honestly what drives most of modern medicine, I feel like, is bringing Chipotle to lunch for doctors. So, statins are given out. Yes, they change numbers and all of this, but you had to consider the unique physiology of sleep apnea. So, here's a case study that will back up with some broader data here. So, they did this in how they spell apnea. So, this is in the UK or Australia, somewhere there. And what they found was that someone who started one statin, simvastatin, when they did that, their sleep actually got worse. Interesting. And then they changed to a different statin, pravastatin, and their sleep apnea markedly improved. Interesting. So this is what you need to know, because a lot of times, again, statins are given out to people with sleep apnea because they have dyslipidemia, bad cholesterol. So to back this up further, there's another study that looked at, hey, how are statins impacting sleep? And when people took statins, they went up in comparison to the control group a little bit here. But then having them closer to bedtime made things even worse. So, moral of the story here is obviously talk to your prescribing provider, but having it further away from bedtime might be more optimal. Based on this, thinking about sleep, it may be more optimal to take a statin away from nighttime and during the daytime. Again, that's what appears here. You can draw your own conclusions. Now, the biggest thing to also consider and talk to your prescribing provider about is the type of statin. And there's many different ways to classify statins, but one is hydrophilic, like they like water, they dissolve in water more, or lipophilic, which is fat soluble. And if we're keeping score, the hydrophilic one, this is a statin that that person took, pravastatin, where sleep apnea got a lot better. All right. Whereas, what were they on before? Simvastatin, this is a lipophilic. So probably leaning towards a hydrophilic one and having a discussion might be a good idea. Just saying here. But back to the more natural show of diffusing the bomb here, so to speak. Um, I guess this bomb's on diffusible. There's no green wire there. So a bit of a duh moment because oxidized LDL, it's oxidized, so we should have antioxidants. But here's the thing. Oxidative stress is very location specific in your body. You may have oxidative stress in your brain, doesn't mean you have it in your heart, or vice versa. Along those lines, different antioxidants like vitamin E versus vitamin C, they will act in different locations in the body. So being able to have more targeted things that are also research backed because like, oh geez, like every time I like look at Instagram or TikTok, it's just like here's 10 antioxidants that can transform your life. But like it's just kind of a bunch of funny foo-foo stuff and never really backed up by research, which I would prefer. And not everything has to be researched, but it is helpful when you're able to see that. So that's why we're going to Slovenia. So this research is out of Slovenia where they too can do science. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just hate when people are like, if it ain't Harvard, it ain't a fact. It's just nonsense. Now, what they did here is they've looked at oxidized LDL in people that had really high oxidized LDL. And they found that after doing a diet, which I will describe shortly, they were able to dramatically drop this oxidized LDL. And the reason I'm focusing on some of these interventions is that, I mean, if you just talk about things to lower cholesterol, yeah, by definition, you will lower oxidized LDL. But I want to be more specific and targeted here so that this could, just be a more focused discussion. And this was interesting. So the dietary intervention was 300 grams of apples, which I'm pretty sure is like 1.5 apples, and 30 grams of raw nuts from Slovenia. I don't think you need to get them from Slovenia. And they used walnuts in this investigation. And pretty much the rationale was that the polyphenols and beneficial fatty acids from raw nuts would be helpful. And then there's also phytonutrients inside of apples. Why apples? Because apples will have the slowest degradation of any of the antioxidative nutraceuticals inside of them or phytochemicals. Whereas like a berry or something like that, the antioxidative status will drop pretty quickly with time, but apples have a longer shelf life, hence why an apple. And I'm now realizing this study is just trying to confirm if an apple a day does indeed keep the doctor away. Those Slovenians, they're funny. And additionally, just for completeness, the caloric intake was about 1,800 calories, so there was a little bit of calorie restriction going on, very likely. And then the composition of the diet is listed as follows: 25% fat, 60% carbohydrate, which is kind of high, for my liking at least, and then 50% protein there. And they were able to have that pretty big reduction in oxidized LDL here. All right. Now, other things you can do, because people love supplements, and don't worry, I have another food thing you can do in a moment. But people like pills. I think people just like simplicity, not so much pills. Nonetheless, bergamot, which just sounds kind of bougie, right? Bergamot. This herb has been shown to selectively reduce oxidized LDL as well. And in this study, it was 150 milligrams of flavonoids. So when you see like supplements, etc., and I don't want to just give one recommendation, make sure that when you do the math on the back of it, because like for instance, let's say this one is 1,000 milligrams, and then on the back it might say 20% bioflavonoids, which would correlate to 200 milligrams. Right? So the study said 150, so make sure that whichever one you go with, if you're looking at it, make sure you do the calculation. It'll be a percentage of the bigger number on the front to make sure that you're within range of what was shown here. And the last one comes from Big Olive Oil. Today's episode is sponsored by the Mediterranean Sea. And I mean, pretty simple, just about 2 tablespoons per day has been shown to selectively reduce oxidized LDL. Some other good stuff too, but here. Now, the big thing about olive oil, make sure it's actually olive oil. Olive oil a lot of times is cut, if you will. Like they put other oils in with it. So it's sometimes not very pure or it's been on the shelf a long time. So having a really good source is really important here. And of course, really boring aerobic exercise, but I guess maybe, hopefully, you already do that. And of course, improving your sleep is going to be important as well. So those are your major things there. Now, a few things before we wrap up. So if you're someone who wants a quick, easy video course to walk you through different breathing exercises to make a lot of progress, go to ochnow.com/reset. Link will be on the screen for that as well. So you can click that. Walks you through exercises so you can build out your own protocol, all of that. Really great. Over here, perhaps even better, this is relatively new, so let me explain it a little bit here. The link for this one's ochnow.com/program. And this one is kind of an answer to, I've been asking people like, hey, I have a lot of information out there. Like, what would be helpful to you? Because really the main source of communication I have with you all is video. Here we go. And learning is great, but being able to have like a step-by-step plan that is also customized to you is basically what a lot of you all said through survey result, what you wanted. So that's what I made. So what this is, the Peckus breathing program, of where you get a custom step-by-step plan, tells you exactly what to do month by month. And you also get audio tracks, so you can just play those, listen to what you want there. And you also get some guidance along the way. So let me kind of break this down further. So like I said, yeah, so we figure out, hey, day by day, week by week, what are we targeting so that you can make the best results, and also doing it in a step-by-step fashion. So it's just like having a workout plan made for you, but around the breathing exercises. And again, just like a good, easy workout program, we have instructional videos and audio tracks. So all you got to do, look at your piece of paper, press play, you're good to go. And of course, being able to support you with any questions that come along the way, make sure you're doing things right. If you run into any challenges, that's what I'm there to help you out with. And this is all risk-free 7-day trial. All right. So you can check that out. That is ochnow.com/program. So thank you for watching and talk to you soon.